Hi, and thank you for joining us for this episode of the State of Leadership, Simple and Beyond. That is Robert Hilliard. We have a guest today. We'll introduce her in a second. I am Whitney Wiley, and we are here on Thursdays, 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, talking all things leadership. And this week we have a special guest in the house or in the studio, and we got an exciting topic that we're going to be talking about. So before we get started and we introduce our guest, Robert, how's it going?
It's going well. I just want to let you know I have apparently gale force winds outside my house here. So if something happens and I get knocked off, offline, you know why. So
is there a nor'easter happening on the East Coast or something? What's the deal?
They didn't say anything about that. They just said that, they just gave you the temperature, hot. But they didn't say anything about the wind, but it has been whipping out here all day. So.
All right. Well, yeah, nothing we can do about that. And as always, right, technology is going to do what technology is going to do. And so does weather. So we one of the things that we can say about leadership is you got to learn to be flexible and roll with the punches. So there you go. So with that, we have a guest, a very special guest, and Robert's going to introduce her. So Robert.
Sure. Let me introduce our guest. So Joone Kim Lopez is the general manager and CEO of Moulton Niguel Water District, which provides 6 South Orange County cities with drinking water, wastewater, and recycled water services. Her leadership spans roles at Calaveras County Water District and Apple Valley Ranchos Water Company, leading to the founding of the California Data Collaborative, a groundbreaking effort that unites water utilities across California. She holds a master's degree in public administration and a bachelor's in communications. This past March, Joone piloted the Officeless CEO. As such, she does not have a designated workspace. She is currently chronicling the impact of this approach on her company. This mixture of innovation and collaboration is why we were eager to interview Joone. So with that, let's welcome Joone Kim Lopez to the State of Leadership.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me.
We are excited. For those of you who don't know me from my former life, I was a lawyer and lobbyist for the Association of California Water Agencies, the largest water association, trade association in the United States. And Joone's water district was one of the members of that association. And I had opportunity to meet Joone back then. We didn't really get to work together a lot, right? We had probably a couple of bills here and there that your district weighed in on, but we didn't have a chance to get to work together. So I'm really excited to learn more about you and to share what you're doing, because I think that the work that you're doing, the chance that you're taking in leadership is important, and more leaders need to be open to trying different things to improve the not only their leadership, but the teams that they are leading.
Well, Whitney, we miss you. I mean, you did great work for us, and still serving on the board, you were just one of the outstanding staff there. And it's wonderful to see you branching out and doing amazing things like this, and getting a chance to meet Robert. Be careful. I'm worried about
Robert and I went to grad school. We got our master's degrees together, and so which was like 9 years ago. Right? We met 11 years ago. So I think Robert knows just how careful he needs to be.
Absolutely. So it's really great to have you on the show, and we're going to do our interview a little differently today. Usually I have a set bunch of questions, but today we wanted to be a little more free-flowing. I'm going to start off with the standard question, but then we're going to deviate from the script a little bit. So I want to start by asking you to really tell us about your journey, Joone, and what led to you, working at your current position right now.
Well, my story is a little conventional, and Whitney knows this. I've been in the water industry, gosh, a little over 20 years now, but this is not where I started. Actually, before I got into water, I was a police officer. And so still very much in public service. And that wasn't planned either. So my life has taken these very interesting turns and these unconventional routes, but that has really helped me to be where I am today and hopefully be very effective. So just to kind of go back, my parents and I immigrated to the United States when I was 8 years old from South Korea. We didn't know a word of English, had nothing, but it's really the American dream, how we were able to benefit from so much of the provisions that the government gave us. And from there on, going to school, and my first job into the public sector was with City of Pasadena.
Mm.
And initially, I was just a civilian working with the council, the police department, and the business groups back in 1994 to get the city ready for the World Cup. And so, about a year into the job, the police chief at the time and some of the command staff said, we think you'd be a great police officer. You should really consider a career in that. And so I did. I trusted those who I respected, who I looked up to, and I got into law enforcement. And it was such an important experience in my life because it taught me that everyone has a story, to respect the dignity and the humanity of people from all walks of life. It also taught me a lot about me, my limits, my strength, and that I've always taken that with me wherever I went, both in personal life as well as my professional career. And then about 7 years into law enforcement, I love what I did. I always say it's the closest thing to being a superhero, being able to help people every day, all day. I got to work in very privileged assignments from vice narcotics, became a corporal in charge of the training program. But I wanted to start a family. So at that time, I had gotten my master's at Cal State Northridge, and I just started looking for jobs. So this was before internet, all the ways that we look for work. So I was looking at newspapers and applying. And the first place that called me where I ended up working was a water agency in Los Angeles County. And that's when my journey started. And it was a bit of a transition, going from being a police officer to being in public affairs. And I was like the lowliest level. They didn't even have a title for me.
Wow.
They told me on my day one, you are everyone's peon. So you just do whatever people tell you to do. And I did. I said, whatever I do, I'm going to do a good job at it. And then 7 years later, just with hard work and some great opportunities and blessings, I became a CEO. And it just really took my career into a lot of different places. I got to work in Northern California, Southern California, ag community, urban community, disadvantaged, affluent. And one of the things that I learned is that when it comes to water, everyone is right. And it's really about listening and trying to facilitate common ground. And as a CEO, I've always believed it's not about me. It's about everybody else and who I serve. And always keeping that as my focus has given me a lot of wonderful joys in this position. And I think it also led to having right now, Moulton Niguel, we're the top workplace in Orange County and United States. We're very proud of our culture because it takes all of us. And it's just been an amazing journey, and it's not over yet.
Fantastic.
I want to say congratulations. I saw that that you guys were a top workplace, and that's no small feat, right? And in a work atmosphere where what 50, 60, 70%, depending on the study, of employees are disengaged at any particular time, to have that as an accolade for your district is huge.
Thank you. We're very proud of it. I'm certainly very proud of it because again, it takes all of us, and you just can't sit on your laurels. I would have been in a top workplace for all these years because things are changing, especially after COVID. Everybody knows this, how we work, the environment, the method, everything is changing. So part of the thing that's so important is you always have to evolve. Right? It's not about what I think. It's not about my style. It's sort of what works for all the different generation, all the different functions, and always adapting. And I think that's an important part of leadership, is always adjusting and adapting to affect the right outcome.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic. So we were really interested and intrigued, really, when we were reading about this officeless CEO concept. So why did you decide to be an officeless CEO?
Well, the reason we started is in June of 2021, we moved into our new headquarters. And it was right after the pandemic. And we were all excited to come back, be with each other again. And over time, our function and our responsibilities have grown based on what our customers want. And we started to see that the office spaces that we were starting to kind of run out. We had a lot of cubicle spaces, but the office spaces were running out. And we know this, right? There's a certain level of not just hierarchy about the size of the office, you having an office or not having an office, but also people get really accustomed to it. They start having their pictures. It's kind of like home away from home. And because of the people that we hired and because of just different situation, I had to pull some people out of their office into the cubicles. And they handled it amazingly with great attitude. But I also understood that it's human nature to miss and wonder, why am I getting pulled out, or why isn't that person? So I thought, let me do it myself and set the example. Because yeah, we all get comfortable, but it's really, if I'm asking you to do something, I'm ready to do it myself, and I'm going to show you that. And that's really important, I think, when you have an organization, because they watch what the person at the top does. So I would never ask my employees to do anything that I wouldn't do. And that was really the inspiration of, since I'm going to give up my office, then really nobody should feel one way or another about it. And then it also got me thinking about how the world of work is evolving. I was at this event, and we know people are working remotely. And a lot of the companies now, worldwide companies, private companies, Fortune 500 companies, they don't do offices anymore. There's a lot of common spaces. And of course, there's limitations to that. But this one particular company, even the chairman didn't have an office. And so it got me thinking, well, there's kind of, this is a two for one. On one hand, it's setting sort of the right example for my staff. But I thought this might be a way to also reimagine and rethink our workspace going to the future. Because as we grow, how might we reconstruct our working space to be much more collaborative and open, but also just more functional? And really the best benefit of going officeless was, I love I love my employees and being able to talk to them, and I always make my rounds, but I can't just plop down and sit at one department, because then that's weird. Right? They're like, why is she staying? It just seems like I'm watching what they do. But now that they know I don't have an office per se, that when I'm there, they just know that's where I'm camped out for the day or half a day. And I have also a lot of meetings that take me, outside of the office or in the meeting, in other parts of the building. So it doesn't mean that I have to always sit in my office. As a matter of fact, I think if you're staying in the office all day, something's not getting done. And it just created a much more comfortable, for me, to just go and plop down anywhere. And I think everybody knows that. And they've really been kind, making sure that I'm comfortable. And it's always those little side conversations that you have that really means the world. And just being able to kind of shoot the breeze with the employees, to hear some of their collaboration and brainstorming, has just given me even more insight than ever before. So it's been fun. I really enjoyed it. And I keep asking the employees, like, is this working for you? Like, because let me know if it's not. And I called it a pilot. That way no one has to feel committed one way or the other. And I also checked in with my board members to make sure that they're comfortable. And so they're all testing it out. That's why it's still a pilot, and it's still undetermined as to the final outcome.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Whitney.
You've said a couple of different things. One at the top of the show, and you said that your leadership style is not about you. And then the other thing that you did is you were telling the story of how you moved into this pilot about being an officeless CEO is that you wouldn't ask your employees to do things. You don't ask your employees to do things that you wouldn't do. And can you talk a little bit more about that, right? Because a lot of what works for, and I use that term loosely, I think works for, but what is appealing for a lot of people when to get a position of leadership is that that this hierarchy exists and the perks that come along with that. And so some of those perks are, I don't do things that other people do, and I don't have to subject myself in the same way. And so is that something that you brought with you? Is that something that you've learned over time? And could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, before I was a CEO, I wasn't. And we all start somewhere. We all start from the bottom. And I used to look at the leaders of the different organizations and places that I worked. And, if they just talk the talk, but they don't walk the talk, you just don't respect them as much,
Yeah.
because you respect them because of their title, not because of who they are. And especially when they do things that are inconsistent with the values, the principal values of being a good person,
Yeah.
being kind, having a safe environment, and all the sort of the negative experiences that I had coming up has really strengthened my resolve that when I become that person at the top, this is what I want to create, an environment where people feel safe, physically, emotionally, mentally, where people feel fulfilled. And I know that if I just tell people what to do, then they'll do it just because of the roles, but with only so much. But if they really believe in you and they really are inspired by you, they'll go above and beyond. And that's why it's so important for me that I never forget where I come from in all aspects. And if you are wanting to be a CEO for the perks because you get the big office or you get the big paycheck and you don't have to do the work that the others do, I actually think that's a very misled motivation. And you can have the title because anyone can be a CEO, but are you a great CEO? Are you a great CEO according to the people that follow you? And I know that I'm in the spotlight all the time, and I try to prove myself every day to the employees and to all the people that we work with, our customers, our stakeholders. And, I go out to the field with our operations team because I put on the boots, I get dirty, I'll pick up the shovel. Like, I want to see
Do you
what you
put on
see.
the boots, Joone? I see your shoes. Do you put on boots though?
I do have yeah, I got my steel toe. Yeah, no, and it's got dirt from the high desert to Northern California to down here. I'm proud of my
I
dirt.
love it. I love it. I
And
love
when
it.
you go out there, it just shows them that you appreciate what they're doing. And we
Yeah.
have fun. They see that I'm just a human being just like them, and that we all want the same things in life. And it brings that sense of closeness. And that's what's important to people, because paycheck, all that is very important, but it's how people feel at work that
Yeah.
is the most important. And when they see me out there, even though I don't know what I'm doing, that we have fun, and they realize that I care about you and I want to learn what's important to you. I want to see how your job is. I want to support you and give you the resources and the tools and the support that you need to do it better, and that I care about you. I think that's the most important thing, is that the words I care about you has to be shown every day. It's not enough that you say it. It has to be shown. And that's why, to me, I want the kind of environment that I would want to work in for my employees. I would want to give them better than what I want. Right? There's a golden rule, there's the platinum rule. It's not just about treat others like you want to be treated, but I really do try to treat others better than I want to be treated.
I love that. I love that. And you're filled with such good nuggets there. And if and we say this here on the show all the time, right? If If your leadership is about you, then you're, yes, you could have the title, but you're not going to have the people,
Yeah.
right? And
And
ultimately,
I also find that it's more joyful. Like, just
yeah,
try it. And don't be afraid, because you want to have fun. I mean, we should all want to have fun. To me, those are the important joys, because people get burnt out at the job because it can be stressful. But we shouldn't look to others to keep that joy. I think in our
yeah,
role, we have to find that joy every day and make that reach so that it sets, again, the right example.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, Whitney, remind me to forward this episode to some of my former CEOs that I've worked with. So I want to pivot back to this whole concept of being the officeless CEO. I mean, so many CEOs that I've worked with, and you when you were talking, Joone, I was reminiscing about the big offices in the ivory tower, and we'd be downstairs working really hard, and then I worked in an organization where you actually had to have an appointment to go talk to the CEO. So I would make an appointment, and I'd go up to the ninth floor where all the executives, all the C-suite executives were, and they literally be sitting at their desk, old school, with their feet up, reading the newspaper. Right? It was really interesting, and yes, they were all men, but that's besides the point. But the question I want to ask you is what are the advantages? You started touching on some of them. What are the advantages of being an officeless CEO?
You stay more connected to
Mm,
the people of the organization, uh, because you have an open door policy. But let's be honest, people don't make that trek into the CEO's office, because then everyone's looking, well, why is he going in there? Why is she going there? What's going on? And so when I used to make my rounds regularly, that those were opportunities to just check in, say hello. But being able to spend a little bit of time in one area allows me to see also how people are interacting, and it allows me to catch those little detailed conversation where I say, okay, that's how they solve problem. I was sitting in our operations team, our valve crew, and they were talking about an emergency break that they had. And just seeing their coordination also allowed me to see who are the leaders within the organization, because leaders are everywhere. So I get to sort of eavesdrop a little bit and see what's going on, who's taking the lead, what their process is. And one, I'm very proud of them, but also it gives me a little bit of a close up inside look. The other thing too is just by moving around, it encourages employees to move around. And I think that's very healthy. I mean, we all have to get our work done, but collaboration, instead of just sitting behind a screen and emailing everything and texting everything, like walk over to the next desk or to the next office and talk to them face to face, eyes to eyes, and say, Robert, we're working on this and just had a question for you. And we already do that, but it just creates this movement within the organization that makes it fun. And it also allows me to spend time with groups that normally I don't spend as much time. For example, our IT team. I just call them when I need something. I make my rounds, but just to kind of spend some time there and just to see what they need and how things are. How are the workspaces? How are the work conditions? How are the tools? And those are the real sort of insights that are helpful. And then when I talk to my board of directors, my board members, it's not that I just have the secondhand knowledge. I've been out in the field, I've seen this, and I see how that works. Just gives me just a little bit more to talk about. And that's why I've always been about just being very present with my employees. But really being officeless has elevated that, because now people expect me to be out there. And I think that's kind of the difference, is that she's wandering because right now she's piloting no office and she's going to be here. And then people are much more, I think, quick to pull me aside. And they also say, hey, why don't you come work over here? That also tells me that they actually want me around. Because if I walk in and no one's making eye contact, like, that's not a good sign, right? But when they say, hey, why don't you come work at our space, or that also makes me feel good about myself. But also it's an indication that employees feel comfortable. And that's a really strong indicator. The other benefit, it's like you really get your steps in. because, you're just kind of always on the move. And you just realize, at least in my opinion, and again, every CEO has a different process. I have great friends who I look up to their CEOs that, we have this conversation, and they want their office and they have really good reasons. But I think the most important part of what we do as leadership role in this organization is always done outside of our office. Can't really lead from the office. You can get work done, you can do a lot of things at the office, but you can't lead from the office. So those are some of my takeaways so far. I've been doing this since now March 6th, and yeah, I'll keep you posted.
Yeah. Whitney, I see you writing feverishly over there.
I'm taking such copious notes because I'm looking for things. So just so all of you know, in addition to the interview, we've got an article that's going to go along with this, and so I'm looking for nuggets for quotes to make sure that they make it into the article. But something that you said just really struck a nerve with me, and it is that you can't lead from the office, right? And that so many people are, that's where they are, and that's what they're leading with, right? And the reality is leadership is about relationship, and it's about communication and building trust. And so, and whether one chooses to be officeless or not, right? Those are the core, the core concepts that go along with leadership. And so I just love that you can't lead from the office, and so being out and about. But here's something that, as you were talking, I'm interested in knowing, what is the typical day like, right? In are your visits to the different functions within your organization? I know you said you've been out in the field, you've got IT, so you've got different departments, I would imagine, within the headquarters of your district. And then you've got your staff that works out in the field, and they're in different places in different locations. But what's a typical day like, if such a thing exists? And do you schedule where you go, or do you sort of just pop up and let people say, "Oh, Joone's here"?
Yeah, so I would say I'm not your typical water CEO, general manager. And the reason why I say that is I just really have an affinity for people, people within the organization, people that we serve. When I say I love my board members, people think I'm crazy, but I do, because I always find something in a person that I think is relatable and important. And I focus on that because I think we need more of that in the world. But that's just the way that I've been raised. And so for me, I really enjoy working with people from all walks of life. And because of that, I'm just not doing the job of the CEO of Moulton Niguel Water District. You mentioned in my bio the founder of the California Data Collaborative, but that was really about people too. It wasn't about big data. It's like, how do we create an environment, a space where the up and coming, the younger generation, the emerging leaders of tomorrow, people from all different walks of life, because when it comes to data, it does really bridge different backgrounds of people, whether you speak English or not, there's this common platform. And it's really become a movement about transforming our industry for the better to meet the needs of the future, but also cultivating this relationship, like you said, Whitney, of how do we bring people together to build those strong bonds as we go into the future. And also with our community. When I started the district 12 years ago, none of the cities knew us. We were not out there. But I love to go to these community events to show myself, to meet the people face to face, and get to know each other as people. And having meetings, that's how we build a relationship. So the day depends. There are days where I could be in this building and I am in the meeting rooms like half a day. Or I could be having meetings outside of the organization, or I could be in Sacramento advocating for the things that are important to our communities and our agency. So it's never a typical day, but the more I broaden our network, the more relationships that we build, diverse relationship, right? Not just amongst water, but a very diverse relationship. And that builds more strength, that brings more unity and ability for us to better serve our communities and broaden that definition of community outside of our service area, but much more broadly. So from that standpoint, the day depends. And that's what I love about it, because I don't think I could do the same thing every day for all day. As far as how do I sort of circulate myself within the organization, yeah, I don't tell people where I'm going to be because sometimes I don't even know. And I do pop up, but they've gotten used to that. And it's not unnerving for them, which is another sign that they're not freaked out when I show up, which is a good thing. So it all kind of depends. And I just go up unannounced and I situate myself in an area. I don't use other people's desks because I don't want to interrupt their personal area. So I sit either at just a communal table or an empty cubicle, and I'm in the area, but not like in their space. But it's just sort of, it's very fluid. And I think that just creates an environment where it's not about the hierarchy. We all have org charts, but how we function is really more seamless and more flat.
I want to, do you have any hybrid or virtual employees, or is everyone back in the office? Where are you guys in your work schedules?
So in September of 2021, everybody came back to work,
Okay.
like before COVID. But we also realized that the world had changed, and I I did a pilot, and let's try doing a hybrid. So right now, because when it comes to operations, they can't do that. But when you look at most of the non-operations, Mondays and Friday is sort of your option to work remotely. But everybody's here Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then if we need you on a Monday or a Friday because there's a meeting or we need something, then everyone is ready to be here. So that's what we've been doing for now since last year, and it's working well because it's also flexible. If I need you here, then you're here, but we kind of have that bookend. And I think the reason why it's important to have set days where everyone is here. I heard someone else say this. When people come to work, and if you're just allowed to be there any day, and it just so happened that when you show up to work, a lot of your colleagues aren't there, then it's kind of lonely. Just empty area, empty building. So then you tend to go home. But if you come to work and you see everyone, it's buzzing, there's energy, then you're just like fear of missing out. And you don't want to go. You want to be here. You want to see what's going on. You're engaged. And so I think it's really important to have those designated days because that energy at workplace, if you do it right, is really what creates that culture. And that culture can't happen on a Zoom. Really, culture has to happen in person. It can certainly transition to the Zoom, but we do need that connection as people. I think that's really important.
Did you guys decide that as a group or your leadership team? How did you come to where you've landed?
I talk with my employees. I talk with my managers, but I also talked about every month we have what's called all hands, where I have all the 200 employees and we all come together once a month. And it's an opportunity to share news because I do think it's important for everyone in the organization to understand what is happening, the big picture, so they know that the role and the importance they play in the bigger picture. But it's also time for us to have a little fun, recognize good work, recognize new employees, and just for us to kind of come together. And so I talked about it there too. And I got a lot of input from everybody, and we came up with that together. It's amazing how many good ideas employees have if you just ask them the right question and you listen. Like everything that I have done that I think is good during my tenure as a CEO didn't come from me. It came from somebody else, whether it's my staff, whether it's my board, whether it's the customers. You just got to listen. And the treasures are out there.
Yeah.
I love that, because a lot of times when we think of CEOs, or we have this idea that Whitney and I don't, and I'm sure you don't, but that they're doing everything, on their own. And it's really not. It's this collaboration that allows that leader to come up with those great ideas and to let other people's ideas be heard and push them forward and allow them to develop, so that it's just it's great to hear that coming from somebody at your level. We talked a bit about, I asked you a question about the advantages. I want to flip that a little bit and talk about some of the challenges that you've encountered since you started piloting this model.
I'm not a spring chicken, so I do miss sort of like having a place that I could go and sit. It's your space. So of course, you miss that. And to a certain extent, people work and they work to have an environment where they feel like they've kind of arrived. And truth be told, yeah, having that corner office, right? Everyone works for that. Uh, and the things that you have around you. So in my office, I have things that employees have given me, the special memories. And when you sit there and you look at those items, it sort of energizes me when I'm having a hard day. And not having a place that is yours that you can go to comfortably, sure, I miss that comfort, because I do feel a little bit like a nomad. And my office is still there, and I do use it sometime, but I have to be disciplined about the pilot that I'm doing. I got to be like all in. It's kind of like acting, right? You got to like be full in. And so I do miss just having that comfort, and not having sort of a place that is my own. But it's a small sacrifice for so much of the bigger gains. I also need to make sure that this is working for my board members and the employees as well, because it matters. And I want to make sure that it's as good for them as it is for me. And that's part of the evaluation as well.
Excellent. Excellent. I do have a follow-up question. I'm seeing Whitney cooking up something over there, so I'm going to ask her, what do you got, Whitney?
No, go for it.
So I want to just tap into that, because Whitney and I are big into research and looking at trends and things like that. So the question I want to ask you is, how are you chronicling your journey as you're doing this? How are you, capturing all those nuggets, or looking at some of the challenges and the workarounds?
I wish I was chronicling it better, but it's hard because you're moving, things are happening, days are really busy, and I think that's the other upside of being officeless, because you can really get preoccupied of the issues or the things that you're handling. And it's always important. I used to say I would go take a lap if I'm having a hard moment. I take a lap because when I take a lap, I see the employees, and it brings me back to what this is really about. It makes me happy. And in that way, it is just always a reminder to remind oneself why you're in this in the first place when the job gets difficult. As far as the workaround, I focus on what is positive. And, I got my little backpack and I have a lot of different things there now. And I just move around like a little nomad and go from here to there. So there hasn't been too much of a workaround around challenges. I think it's just getting myself comfortable, mentally and physically, that you're on the move, and just like don't get too comfortable parking somewhere. And even as I move around, I try to make sure that I'm not always kind of going to the same place. I try to move around and make sure I haven't missed an area that's available. So it also keeps me on my toe, and I like that, because I think it's easy for us to sort of get used to things, and this certainly keeps me from getting used to anything.
Sounds great. It sounds.
I will tell you though something, Robert.
Yeah.
I always say this. We all have more supporters than haters, but eventually, ultimately, there's always haters. And, I've done a lot of LinkedIn posting, and this is the one that gets the most views of being officeless. And it's amazing. I go to different places and like people know about it. And, someone said to me, well, not everyone's very positive about this. And I said, okay, what is it? So some people say, well, of course, she must never be at work because she's not in her office, right? And you can pick on anything, but again, that's just a different way of thinking. Even when I had the office, I found that I wasn't in my office very much anyways. That's why it wasn't such a leap for me to do that.
Right.
But it's also that perception that people may have of if you're not in your office, you must not be working. That is kind of the old school mentality. And I love old school. Right? I am old school, but it is just a different way of thinking. And this is kind of pushing those buttons as well. And it's testing me in being able to respond to those kinds of feedback. And I love those, by the way, because again, it keeps me on my toes, and I love to have those conversations with those who see things very differently than I do.
Yeah, it's very interesting how I'm old school too. So, but it's very interesting to see how before the internet, before the advent of LinkedIn and all these things, people tended to keep those comments to themselves, right? But now that we have social media, people, and I suspect that people play a lot nicer on LinkedIn than they do on Instagram or Facebook, but this has kind of emboldened a lot of people to say things that they probably would have kept, to themselves before. But I don't know how well, usually on LinkedIn, it's more professional because it's a professional platform. But I do notice that on Instagram or on Facebook, the people that usually do that, they usually have private accounts and they don't have their picture up. So I tend to, I see what you're saying though, that information, that data can help you. It keeps you on your toes, like you say. It helps you look at how other people perceive things. And sometimes when you do that, you come up with ideas that makes your process even better. So your haters can actually help you, although they may not be trying to.
Exactly right. I think any feedback is helpful if you receive it the right way. And I also realize it doesn't necessarily come from a bad place for some. It just maybe their point of reference
Sure.
is different, and how they can't process how that could work just because it hasn't been their experience. And those are always opportunities to learn something new. And again, this is really always about evolving. Because as human beings, we get used to things, it gets comfortable, we get comfortable with ourselves, and always being uncomfortable is a good way to make sure that I'm always progressing, that I'm always growing as a person and as a leader. And that's really important because the world is changing. And to me, if I want to be of best value to those who work for this organization, those who we work for, and I'm not married to any one thing. For me, it's always been about our hero model: honesty, effort, respect, one team. Those things have not changed, but everything else, how I do it, how we do it, what we do, all that, I'm flexible. I adapt, because the ultimate responsibility that I have is to deliver meaningful outcomes. And I can't do that by myself. I need people. I need relationship based on trust to get the big important things done. And that's really something that I've learned over the years and has changed my life, changed me as a person in what's important.
Fantastic.
You talked about people's perceptions and comments, that feedback that you get. We always say, feedback is just information, right? You can take that, and nothing has any meaning other than that which you give it. And so if someone gives you some feedback, some information, you get to choose what to do with that. But two things struck me with that is one is probably a lot of projection. And I think it does come from the fact that people haven't had maybe a particular experience. And so they can't really see how it could work this way. Or if I was in that position, this is what I would be doing. And therefore, maybe there's some projection on there. But what really struck me, and we talk about this a lot, is that this is usually the other way around, right? Which has been particularly after the pandemic and the return to work, and some of the pushback from employees doesn't seem to be maybe a lot from your district, but from other organizations. And I want to say something else on that in a second, but this that it's usually management that is, well, if I don't see you working, then you must not be working, which isn't the case. And that a whole different metric, this is an opportunity to invite a different metric about evaluating whether or not work is getting done. It's not about whether or not I see you doing work, but is the work getting done? Right?
Exactly.
And so there has to be a measurement of the work. And I get sometimes it's difficult for a CEO or people in leadership, management, to be able to quantify what they're doing, because what they're doing has to do with the work that they're doing, leading and managing people. Right. And so, but I think that goes back to the point you made earlier, which is you can't lead from your office. And so if you're actually out and about doing what leadership is about, and I think the value of our program is that we're trying to help people understand what leadership is about. Right. And it's not about putting your thumb on people and trying to drive them to get to a particular result. You can do that. You said that earlier, right? You as a person in a position of authority, you can do that. You can just tell people what to do, and most of them will do it because you said do it. But that's not leadership, right? That's not leadership. And leadership is about getting people to do from their own motivation and inspiration. And what I hear you saying ultimately is that you're creating an environment where your people can do that, where they are able to thrive, that you're empowering them, that you're giving them the tools, the resources, and the best of you so that they can bring the best of themselves to work. And I feel like if we could just like bottle that, right, that we could turn around so much of what's wrong in a lot of organizations and get bring those numbers down of disengaged employees, right? Unhappy employees, people with the quiet quitting and the great resignations and all those things, one, which have been around always, but we wouldn't have so much of that if we had more CEOs, leaders, managers, etc. Just they don't have to go officeless, but your point about being open to learning and evolving and trying new things to see if you could get a different result without having to be a micromanager or feel like you need to be a micromanager in order to get the work done.
You're exactly right. I mean, that's exactly it. And it's not easy leading, because it's, we all like to be liked, but that's not what this job is about. So
Right.
There's time to be kind, compassionate, nice, but there's also time to tighten it up. And when someone doesn't do what they're supposed to do, I always say this with the hero principle. If you're not honest, if you don't get your best effort, if you don't respect one another, you will not find yourself in this organization for too long. So there are times when you have to be firm and you have to hold people accountable. And as an organization, though, people like that, because if you're working hard and you see someone around you that's not adhering to these principles, then it's like double standard. It's not consistent. People need to see that consistency. So I'm not always a nice guy. I mean, my staff will tell you, we have this word, I get energized. That's when I turn it up, because sometimes you have to. But at the same time, you have to keep the environment dynamic. If I'm not having fun, trust and believe nobody else is having fun. So we got to have fun. We got to keep it fresh. We have to invite ideas. And how do I know that this is working well for us? One, I ask, but I also see how other in the organization are working with each other, the ideas that they bring, the great ideas. I see how our customers feel. They give us these compliments and saying, your employees are outstanding. When we have events, everyone says, you have the best employees. Like, they're so kind, they're so helpful, they're so on top of it.
Right.
My board members are happy. When everyone is feeling good because everyone is getting what they want, not just clean water and wastewater service. Beyond that, when we have people who are feeling good about this organization inside and out, to me, that is the most important metric, right? It's not about doing like how many calls have you made, how did you get in here right at 7 or right at 8 a.m. It's not about that. We focus on the meaningful outcome, the impact. If
Yes.
we have goals, are we meeting those goals? Are we meeting our strategic plan? Are we accomplishing? Are we having the best financial position? Are we getting the AAA rating? Do we have satisfied customers? These are all important feedback that lets us know that it's
Yeah.
working, and you need a lot of different input to see if we're doing well, because we got to hear from everybody, and that's what we always invite within and outside of this organization.
I love that. Love that.
That's great. So I have one more question, and this is, Whitney will recognize this from is going back to our templates of questions. So, what's on the horizon for you and your team?
Oh, what's not? I say all things are possible. I believe that we can have it all and we can do it all. Uh, it's what's in the horizon. The dream is built together. I don't come in and saying this is where we need to be 5 years from now or 3 years from now. We create that vision together. Really, my job is to facilitate that, right? It's not about me. So, what do our employees want and need? What do our customers want and need? What do my board members want and need? And I take all that together and I blend it and I synthesize it, come up with a vision, and I check in. Did I get this right? Did I get this right? Is what you said? And then now I just take that and push that out, get people pumped up about it, and making sure that that always requires modification, evolution, and adjustment as things go. When I think back to where this agency was 12 years ago, even some of my board members and employees have said it's really unrecognizable. We are a retail water agency, but we're doing mighty things. And we have partnership with Africa Water and Sanitation Association. We are being invited to the UN World Data Forum. United Nations Environmental Program wants to talk to us about partnership. We have a pilot going on with Amazon. We got to work with Netflix. They gave us their talent and tools for free. We get to work with friends across the country, across the world, like Denmark. There is really no limit when you let your imagination not only soar, but come together. And it is really a movement that we create. It's a movement towards a broad community, different community, helping those who may not be as fortunate, making sure that those who are not represented are represented, making sure that we truly have an inclusive mindset, which is not just about gender, ethnicity, but it's about all perspectives, all views, all opinion, every character, everyone is welcome. And how can we bring all that into our industry that is essential to life and make our industry better and keep pushing those bounds and never lose focus of why we're all in this, which is it's about serving people. It is about people, and it will always be about people. And how can we make it better experience for those that we serve? That has been the guiding light. And when you give somebody, when you give in our organization that charge to everybody, they come up with the actual ideas of how to do that, not just in their respective areas, but what we can do as an organization. They have conversations in the hallway, they have conversations in the meeting about how we could achieve that. That absolutely fills my heart. That lifts me up because it shows that we are making an impact.
That's fantastic.
That's a mic drop moment. So,
Absolutely.
We can let that stand. Unless you have a final word you'd like to add, Joone. I've enjoyed this, and I've enjoyed learning more about you, about what you're doing in the district, and hopefully, and I trust that this is true, that your experience will have an impact on others, and for whomever, right, has perceptions, for whatever the impetus is of those perceptions, that they open their eyes, open their minds to the possibilities, right, that there are other ways to lead, and that's all we need to do, is be open that there are other ways.
Well, I just want to thank you not only for having me, but for doing the show. I think it is so important to have this very intentional dialogue and inviting challenges and feedback and ideas because we don't get to talk about it enough. And I think it's so important because we can all make an impact. You know, leadership is not tied to a title, and the world is changing, and sometimes it feels unsteady and uncertain.
Mm-hmm.
And it's moments like that that we actually need to talk about how do we do better? How do we help one another? And that's what you're doing. And you're doing it very diligently as well. And so I'm just very thankful that you're doing this for so many of us who can certainly use all the help.
Thank you so much for being with us.
And thank you. We appreciate that.
Yeah, and lending us your wisdom. This has been a fantastic interview, and I personally want to thank you. Whitney, take us home.
Well, thank you, Joone. And absolutely a pleasure having you on the program. Robert, thank you for guiding the conversation. And we want to thank you for listening. Again, this is the State of Leadership, Simple and Beyond. We are here on Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific. Ordinarily, Joone, we would invite the audience if they wanted to get in touch with our.
Please share. I love to hear from the audience. I love to hear from everyone. This is about community.
Awesome. Well, then I will put your email address or the link to your LinkedIn in the post when we have that episode go live. Robert, if someone wanted to get in touch with you, to work with you, how might they go about doing that?
They can reach out to me at inspireme@roberthilliardcoaching.com, or they can just go to my website, Robert Hilliard Coaching, and fill out that contact form. Let me know what kind of challenges you're having, what goals you have, and we can set up a discovery call, and we can see if whether or not we'd be a good match for each other.
Awesome. Thank you. And if you want to reach out to me, you can reach me at shiftingintoaction.now.site, shiftingintoaction.now.site. Thank you so much, Joone, for your time, for your knowledge and wisdom. And thank you for joining us for this really valuable conversation. So until next time, take care.